Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere cold. No, colder than that. Colder than your ex's heart. Colder than the back of the fridge where pickle jars go to die. We're talking Antarctica, the coldest, windiest, most isolated stretch of rock and ice on Earth, and possibly the weirdest. You don't think of Antarctica as dangerous in the traditional sense. It's not teeming with predators. You probably won't be eaten alive. But you might be buried, or frozen, or quietly lose your grip on reality as the wind whispers your name for 3 weeks straight. Because here's the thing. Antarctica isn't just empty. It's quieter kind of quiet that makes you hear things. It's a place where things vanish, where ice moves like breath, and where satellites spot shapes that nobody wants to explain. Buried valleys, frozen staircases, blood-red waterfalls. Sometimes even faces staring up from the snow. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. I always love seeing who's drifting off from which corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts with the silence. You're in a helicopter, flying low over a stretch of white, so endless it looks like someone just forgot to paint this part of the world. Clouds swirl below you. The sun never quite sets, just spins sideways in the sky like a broken clock. You land near the Ellsworth Mountains, one of the few places in Antarctica that has the audacity to stick out above the ice. The wind bites your face like sandpaper. There are no smells, no birds, no landmarks, just cold. And yet, somewhere in the distance, a shape stands out. It's a mountain, tall, sharp, symmetrical. You squint. It has 4 triangular faces and a pointed peak, not jagged like most mountains, smooth, geometric, suspiciously pyramid-shaped. Scientists call it a new Vostok, which is basically a fancy term for a mountain that pokes up through ice, like a whale breaching the surface. They'll tell you, it was formed over millions of years, sculpted by wind and ice, like the Matterhorn in Switzerland. Textbook erosion, totally natural. But your eyes don't care about textbooks. From the sky, the thing looks man-made, and you're not alone in thinking that. Since 2016, satellite images of this formation have sparked a storm of questions. It's located in a remote stretch of the southern Ellsworth Range, near Patriot Hills, remote even by Antarctic standards. Its lines are too clean, its angles too deliberate. Geologists insist it's just a natural oddity, a product of freeze-thaw weathering, a process where water sneaks into rock cracks, freezes, expands, and slowly reshapes entire peaks. But here's a fun side note. Most pyramidal peaks like this have 2 or 3 triangular faces. This one, it has 4, perfectly aligned, like something trying really hard to be noticed, but also pretending it's just hanging out. Historians still argue whether this is just nature showing off or whether someone got here long before humans were supposed to. Because here's where it gets even weirder. The pyramid is almost the exact shape and size as the ones in Egypt and Mexico and Peru. Same structure, wide base, sloping sides, pointy top. Same alignment with the cardinal directions. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe, just maybe, it's not the only one. You check the satellite feed again. A few hills nearby, also suspiciously symmetrical. Some even seem to form patterns, lines, grids, clusters. Nature can be strange, but patterns, that's usually where conspiracy theorists start clearing their throats. You don't want to be that guy, the one yelling about Atlantis from the basement. But you also can't unsee what you saw. And that's the first rule of Antarctica. Once you see it, you start to wonder what else is buried. You circle back to the image of the pyramid, not because it's the only strange thing you've seen, but because it's the first one that refuses to make sense. Like the kind of math problem that haunts your dreams years after graduation. From Above, the lines are too straight, not almost straight. Not nature's trying her best, straight, for distinct faces. A pointed top, no crumbling, no jagged edges, just quiet geometry, sitting in the middle of an otherwise chaotic landscape. Geologists, to their credit, have explanations. A lot of them. You sit through a presentation where a soft-spoken expert walks you through freeze-thaw weathering. The process where melting water seeps into cracks, freezes again, expands, and slowly peels away layers of rock, over thousands, sometimes millions of years. It sculpts sharp ridges and triangular facets. You nod politely. You even take notes, but something nags at you. If this is so common, why aren't all the Nunataks shaped like this? Why don't the Alps and the Rockies, and every wind-blasted range in Siberia, look like Giz's cousins? Historians still argue whether we're seeing natural perfection, or something left behind, something buried. And the buried part, that's the real catch. You see, 90% of Antarctica's surface is covered in ice. Not snow. Ice. Thousands of meters thick in some places. That mountain you're staring at might just be the tip of something much, much larger. A stair step, a rooftop, a corner of something that didn't erode so much as disappear under time. Which brings us to the maps. Back in 1513, an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis drew a world map. Not unusual, but his version showed a southern landmass, a continent right, where Antarctica would be, and it wasn't covered in ice. It had a detailed, rocky coastline, rivers, inlets. Keep in mind, Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820. Now, skeptics say Piri Reis probably stitched his map together from older sources, some of them wildly inaccurate, others copied from even older Greek or Egyptian maps. But here's the strange bit. The coastline on his map matches the actual, subglacial shape of Antarctica. The shape we only discovered with modern ice-penetrating radar in the late 20th century. So how did a 16th century sailor get it right? Supporters of the theory suggest Piri Reis copied it from even older maps. Ones created by a now-lost civilization with global knowledge. Maybe even the same civilization that figured out how to build pyramids across multiple continents. Maybe they visited Antarctica back when it was warm, forested, and green. You laugh a little at the idea, but it's a quiet laugh, a tired one, because if you've learned anything here, it's this: coincidence isn't always innocent. And then someone brings out the satellite images, dozens of them. Different angles, different years, same location. Some show long ridgelines, each with 3 or 4 perfect triangular faces. Some appear like steps, stacked symmetrically. One even resembles a ziggurat, the kind you'd find in ancient Mesopotamia. You ask a researcher, just to be safe. Is this normal? You say, pointing to an image of what looks like a square base peeking from the ice. He shrugs. The weather plays tricks on the snow, he replies. Refreezing, wind erosion. It does weird things. You nod, again, but it still doesn't explain the patterns, or why certain areas seem to hide these shapes more some years than others. In some satellite passes, the formations are obvious clear lines, stark contrast. Then, a year later, the same spot is buried, gone, as if the continent has moods. As if it chooses when to show you something. And that's what really chills you, not the cold, not the wind, but the sense that this continent is not passive. It breathes, it hides, it remembers. You return to base that night and flip through the photos again. One of them catches your eye, taken at a low sun angle, casting long shadows. The pyramid stands tall, its 4 sides glowing orange with light. You imagine it, thousands of years ago, before the ice. Sitting alone in a green valley, warm wines, trees, a river maybe, and someone watching the stars from the top. You wake up to the sound of wind pressing against your window like an ocean against a submarine, constant, heavy, and a little too alive. It's morning, technically, but the light hasn't changed. It never really does here. Antarctica doesn't. Do sunrise, just varying shades of white. You head back to the observation room, bleary-eyed and caffeine-deprived. Today's focus, geology, which sounds boring until you realize geology in Antarctica is basically a murder mystery told in rock layers, with ice as the unreliable narrator. You start with the Nunataks, those strange rock peaks that pierce through the glacier like dragon teeth. They're beautiful, jagged, sometimes symmetrical, sometimes messy, but always lonely. Most are standard metamorphic fairn ice, schist, granite. Nothing to raise eyebrows until you notice something odd. Some of these peaks seem misplaced, as if the underlying bedrock is from a completely different geological era than the rock around it. Historians still argue whether these anomalies are just relics of continental drift or hints of something less natural. You scroll through thermal imaging scans. Under the surface, strange heat signatures appear linear, consistent, man-made looking. Could be lava tubes, could be faults, could be not lava tubes. Then you get to the good stuff. One ridgeline near the Transantarctic Mountains has shown unusual electromagnetic readings for years. Nothing dramatic, just slight deviations, but consistent ones, like something deep under the ice is humming at the wrong frequency. Some scientists claim it's due to the Wilkes land gravity anomaly, a massive dent in Earth's gravitational field under the ice. It's real, it's measurable, and it spans over 300 kilometers wide. Some believe it's the remnant of a giant asteroid impact. Others think it's something else. You start to sweat, not because of the heat, there isn't any, but because the further you go, the less this place feels like nature and more like a cover-up with weather patterns. Then someone brings up Mount Sidley. It's the largest dormant volcano on the continent, about 4,200 meters tall. But what's curious is what they've found beneath it. Ice cores taken from its base contain traces of heavy metals, some of which don't naturally occur in the surrounding geology. Nickel, rare earths, even hints of processed alloys. You're saying someone dumped metal there, you ask, half joking. I'm saying the layers don't match, replies the geologist. Something melted the ice from underneath more than once. And then there are the voids. New ground penetrating radar scans have revealed massive underground caverns, some large enough to hold entire skyscrapers. Most are empty or filled with ancient water, but a few appear to have flat floors and vertical walls. You look again. Could be ice trickery, could be an algorithm error, or it could be architecture. You dig deeper into the reports. One notes a hexagonal pattern etched across a buried valley floor. Another documents a staircase-like drop in terrain that repeats every 5 meters. Nature's never been great at symmetry, and Antarctica seems to be trying to hard dot. So you start asking around. Most researchers dodge the question. Some laugh. One glaciologist leans in and says, "If you see a perfect shape in the ice, walk the other way. It's not meant for us." You thank him and laugh. He does and single quotes later. In the cafeteria, you overhear someone mention an abandoned expedition in the 1980s. A team went out to drill near Lake Concordia, but turned back early after one of their seismic monitors picked up something rhythmic, not mechanical, not tectonic, just a pulse. No papers were published, no data ever released. You go to bed with that phrase stuck in your head. The ice has a pulse, and you begin to wonder, maybe Antarctica isn't hiding something, maybe it's waiting. There are trees under the ice. It's the kind of sentence that sounds like a poem, or a warning etched into the wall of a very old temple. But here in Antarctica, it's just geology. The kind of geology that breaks your brain a little. You're standing in a climate-controlled tent, pitched over a fresh ice core borehole. The wind outside moans like it knows something you don't, but inside, everyone's focused on the latest sample. A leaf, fossilized but unmistakable, a beech tree, according to the paleobotanist. the same kind that still grows in New Zealand and parts of South America. Only this one is roughly 100 million years old and was pulled from Byrd Glacier, just a few hundred kilometers from the South Pole. You hold the tiny fragment of stone press leaf between your fingers and try not to overthink the implications. Historians still argue whether the fossil record conclusively proves that Antarctica was once a lush rainforest, or if this is just a freak case of drifting biology. But then you see the tree stumps, real ones, upright, still rooted in the soil. They were discovered on Alexander Island's 7-meter-tall fossilized conifers, standing like stone ghosts. Around them, ancient pollen, seed cones, and fragments of ferns. Whatever lived here didn't just visit. It thrived. And the climate, oh, it was cozy. Not tropical, but temperate. Scientists estimate temperatures ranged from 13 to 21 degrees Celsius. Yes, that's right, parts of Antarctica were once warmer than modern London. With no polar ice caps, no long winters, and enough sunshine during the summer months to keep things green even during the long night. But then something changed. Glaciers crept in, slowly, first in the highlands, then the valleys. The transformation took millions of years, but it happened. The forests didn't just freeze, they were buried, suffocated under layers of time. And yet, in some areas, life clung on. In 2017, researchers from Rice University drilled into seabed sediment off the Antarctic Peninsula and pulled up 12-million-year-old pollen grains. Not ancient, not dinosaur era, just regular warm weather flora that shouldn't have been there so late in the game, which means some parts of Antarctica stayed green far longer than we thought. Possibly long enough for other things to notice. You try not to jump to conclusions, but your brain's already off to the races. If there was forest and water and warmth, could something intelligent have evolved here? Could something have come here? Mainstream archaeology says no. Homo sapiens evolved about 300,000 years ago, long after Antarctica froze over. The ice sheet is said to be at least 14 million years old. No overlap, no chance. And yet, you hear stories, quiet ones, from colleagues who don't publish much. A geologist who claims to have found tall-shaped stones embedded in ancient soil near Doubleday Glacier. A marine biologist who swears she saw carved symbols on a rock wall revealed during a recent ice calving. One story talks about a column structure, big enough to rival a Roman amphitheater, stone blocks, scattered like forgotten ruins. A few even had symbols etched into them, something between animal motifs and script. None of it confirmed, no peer-reviewed studies. Just whispers, you ask around. No one knows where the artifacts are now. Some say they were sent for testing. Others say they were reburied for protection. You step outside that evening, wrap your coat tighter, and watch the wine trace ghost patterns in the snow. And you wonder, if there was once a civilization here, and it knew what was coming, would it try to survive? Would it build underground? Leave signs in stone? Or would it let the ice take it a shroud of secrecy for something not meant to be remembered? You breathe out slowly. The air is too dry to hold heat, and your breath disappears almost instantly, but for just a second, as the sun skims the horizon like a tired eye. You could almost swear there are shadows moving beneath the ice. You don't remember who first mentioned the map. Maybe the historian from Istanbul. Maybe the cryptic glaciologist who always drinks from a mug that says time isn't real, and neither are coastlines. Either way, you're staring at a scan of the Piri Reis map, dated 1513, and trying not to lose your mind. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary early Renaissance map, the kind drawn by men with wild beards and even wilder guesses about where sea monsters lived. But then your eyes land on the bottom portion on a southern landmass that looks a little too familiar. It's in the right spot. It's roughly the right shape, but what makes it so bizarre is that it shows Antarctica without ice, its actual rocky coastline, which was only discovered with modern satellite technology and radar mapping in the 20th century. So how, in the name of frozen logic, did an Ottoman admiral draw it in the 1500s? Historians still argue whether the Piri Reis map is a lucky guess, a misinterpreted chunk of South America, or something altogether older. Piri Reis himself claimed he based it on ancient source maps, some reportedly going back to Alexander the Great, others possibly Egyptian or even Atlantean in origin. Yes, that word comes up now. Atlantis, you don't want it to, but it creeps in like a draft under a locked door. The theory goes like this: an advanced, prehistoric civilization mapped the Earth long before our current historical record begins. It charted coastlines, including those of Antarctica before the ice came. Maybe they lived here, maybe they just passed through, but they left behind knowledge fragmented, copied, distorted through time. That's how we get pyramids in Egypt, Mexico, Peru, and possibly the Ellsworth Mountains. Same geometry, same cardinal alignments, possibly the same builder's aura, shared legacy. A growing number of fringe researchers along with the occasional rogue academic believe this pattern points to a single progenitor culture, a sort of civilizational seed that scattered across the globe, building pyramids, mapping coastlines, and then vanishing. They call it the mother civilization, or, less poetically, them. You scroll through comparison images. Piri Reis isn't alone. There's also the Orontius Phineas map from 1531, the Boischet map from 1737, and others that show surprisingly accurate depictions of Antarctica's landmass again, without ice. Some maps even depict rivers, inlets, and mountain ranges that we didn't discover until satellite imaging. Coincidence? Photoshop? You're not sure anymore. You start thinking about how cartographers worked back then. No satellites, no planes, no Google Earth, just star charts, gut instinct, and centuries of inherited maps. And yet, how did they trace the subglacial terrain of a continent buried beneath a mile of ice? Maybe they didn't. Maybe someone else did. Before the ice came, you close the digital map and step outside the research station, crunching into snow that's seen fewer footprints than the moon. The wind is gentler tonight, brushing past your hood like a warning softened by time. You glance out toward the ice fields and wonder if there was a civilization here, if they saw the ice coming, if they knew they'd be buried. Wouldn't they want to warn someone? And if all they had left were maps, would we even know how to read them? The sky is low. The sun circles the horizon like it's trying to escape, but keeps getting pulled back in, a white loop. A loop of forgetting. But now you remember. And that's the dangerous part. You've been told not to drill too deep. It's phrased politely, of course. A quiet caution buried in paperwork and protocol. Contamination risk, they say. Preservation of pristine ecosystems. And yet, the warning feels heavier than it should, like it's carrying more than just microbial anxiety. But you drill anyway, not you personally. A robotic system, humming quietly under the white tent on the East Antarctic ice sheet, does the work. You just monitor. Watch as the drill descends through nearly 4,000 meters of ice, layer by layer. Deeper than light, deeper than time. The target is Lake Vostok, one of over 400 subglacial lakes hidden beneath Antarctica's icy armor. This one is different. It's huge, about the size of Lake Ontario, and it's been sealed off from the surface for 15 to 25 million years. A place untouched by atmosphere, light, or human thought. Until now, historians still argue whether these lakes should even be touched. Some say they are pristine time capsules of ancient Earth. Others suggest they might be natural quarantine zones sealed off for a reason. You watch the monitor as the drill breaks through. And then, pressure, a violent surge. Water shoots up, the borehole with force, not trickling, exploding. It mixes with the synthetic drilling fluid, staining everything cloudy and unreadable. The team is ordered to retreat. The mission ends. No proper samples collected. Later, When they test the contaminated slurry, something unusual shows up: microbial life. Not just a few, not struggling, but thriving. You read the report under dim station lights. The organisms live without light, without oxygen, feeding on iron and sulfur. They're extremophiles like the kind found in deep-sea vents or Martian analog sites. But these are strange even for extremophiles. Some form biofilms that shimmer under electron microscopes. Others seem to pair up one cell species forming a shell while another rides inside it, cooperative or parasitic. No one's sure, and that's just Lake Vostok. A few years later, another team drills into Lake Mercer, under the West Antarctic ice sheet. There, too, they find bacterial life, different this time. Possibly older. And again, not weak, adapted. Other lakes begin to show signs of life. Lake Enigma, yes, that's its real name. Microbial mats, shaped like carpets and tree-like growths, structures, patterns, organized forms, where chaos was expected. The term ecosystem is used quietly because if life is this resilient, if it can survive cut off from the surface for 20 million years, then what else could have survived? You close the report and stare into your mug. The tea long since gone cold. You think about Europa, Enceladus, all the icy moons we dream of, exploring, and you realize the test bed for that alien life is already here, and it's under your feet. There's another wrinkle. A few of the recovered microbes have no clear Earth analogues. Not in modern databases, not even close matches. One resembles a known genus, but its genome contains unidentified sequences, junk, DNA, or maybe something we haven't evolved the tools to read yet. The official term in the report is unknown extremophile with anomalous genomic complexity. You say that 3 times and try to sleep, and you can't shake the feeling that you didn't discover something down there. You just reopened something that was sleeping, and now it's awake. You're not easily rattled, but then you stand in front of a waterfall in the middle of Antarctica that looks like it's bleeding from the glacier itself, and suddenly your rational brain starts to sweat a little. They call it blood falls, subtle. Right, it gushed from the Taylor Glacier, high in the McMurdo Dry valleys, and yes, it's exactly as dramatic as it sounds. 5 stories tall, bright crimson, oozing out of an otherwise silent wall of white. It looks wrong, like a wound the ice didn't want to show you. Scientists have an explanation, of course. They always do. The red color comes from iron-rich water trapped beneath the glacier in a salty, oxygen-free pool for over 5 million years. When that water is forced out through a fissure and meets the air, the iron oxidizes, just like rust on an old car. Red waterfall. Case closed. Mostly because, as usual, Antarctica doesn't know how to keep things simple. For starters, the trapped water isn't just salty, it's hypersaline, saltier than seawater. Enough to stay liquid despite sub-zero temperatures. It's been locked under 400 meters of ice, in complete darkness, for millennia. And what's in that water? Microbial life. Again, but weirder this time. These microbes don't breathe oxygen. They don't need sunlight. They feed on iron and sulfur like something out of a subterranean cookbook, and they've adapted in ways we still don't fully understand. Historians still argue whether such isolated life forms are natural extremophiles or remnants of something older, a lineage that once lived on the surface and retreated downward. As the world froze, the idea that life can thrive in complete isolation, in extreme cold, without access to the biosphere, has implications far beyond Antarctica. NASA's ears perked up when blood falls was first studied. Because if life can do that here, it can probably do it on Europa, or Mars, or anywhere with a little ice and a lot of time. But not everyone buys the oxidation story. Some theorists have suggested that the blood-colored liquid is not just iron water, but a byproduct, a vent, a leak from something deeper. Possibly a biological experiment, possibly a forgotten machine. One suggestion, a hidden structure beneath the glacier, using microbes for power or data storage, a biological engine. It's a wild claim. But let's be honest, so is a bleeding glacier. You revisit satellite images. Some show strange regular shapes beneath the Taylor Glacier surface, grids, shadows. One analysis, long deleted from its original host site, claimed the Blood Falls fissure is located along the golden ratio spiral of the glacier's terrain, a mathematical alignment that has no clear natural reason to exist. You stare at that for a while. Then you go back to the waterfall itself. You lean close. The wind howls. The water trickles and drips with a soft hissing sound as it touches the snow. And just for a moment, you feel like it's watching you. You blink. The red sheen seems brighter now. You turn away, but not fast enough to shake the image from your head, because if this is just rusting groundwater, then why does it feel so intentional? You walk away slowly, boots crunching in the dry snow, heart a little too loud in your ears, and the strangest part, you're not afraid, you're curious, because something about Antarctica makes you want to know, even when it's bleeding. Let's be clear, you were never afraid of sea monsters. Sure, you've seen the movies. Giant tentacles wrapping around ships, gaping maws swallowing sailors whole. Good for popcorn, bad for sleep. But sea monsters. Fiction. Until Antarctica. Until you hear about the NINGEN. It starts as a blurry photo on a forum. Some grainy, mist-soaked blob half submerged in the Southern Ocean. But the caption stops you cold. Seen near Japanese research vessel. Roughly 30 meters long. Humanoid shape. Excuse me. The Ningen is said to be a pale, human-like creature, massive, silent, and white as the ice around it. Some accounts give it arms, a face, even legs. Others describe it as more like a smooth-bodied whale with facial features that are too close to ours. Historians still argue whether it's simply a myth, a misidentified iceberg, or a viral hoax that spun out of control in early 2000s Japanese message boards. But ask the sailors, ask the researchers, and you get less certainty. It wasn't a whale, one man says in an old interview. It looked at us. That's when you put the T down. And then, of course, there's the kraken, not the Norse one, not the rum mascot. This one's native to the Southern Ocean, and it's a bit more grounded in biology. Colossal squid, for instance, really exist. Tentacled, aggressive, and with eyes the size of basketballs. They can grow over 14 meters long. Most live too deep to be studied properly. But one washed ashore in 2007 and people haven't slept well since. Then came the satellite photo. Near Deception Island. A long, dark shadow moves beneath the ice. It curves like a whip. A wake follows behind. Some say it's just an iceberg. Others aren't so sure. The shape resembles a squid, but far, far too large. You imagine being on a boat in that water. You imagine something brushing the hull. You imagine never going on boats again. But it's not just creatures. It's where they're seen. The Southern Ocean around Antarctica is strangely empty. Not in terms of biology, it's teeming with krill, penguins, and things with teeth, but in terms of human eyes. Few ships, fewer cameras, plenty of room for legends to fester. And the ice itself. That's where it gets colder. One team hiking across the Princess Elizabeth Land region reported seeing a pale form rise from the snow on the horizon. No photo, just silence. It moved, then sank back under. Another account talks of something standing upright on a drifting iceberg, a humanoid figure, unmoving, watching the ship pass. And here's the thing, nobody wants to be the first to say monster. So they say optical illusion, fatigue, reflection off the snow. But you see the unease in their eyes. Even the penguins seem to know. Whole colonies have been found mysteriously abandoned. Chicks left behind. No predators. No storm. Just silence. As if the land itself whispered, go. You lie in bed that night listening to the wind scratch of the walls like claws. Somewhere outside, the ice groans a low, bending wail that sounds almost vocal. You tell yourself it's just pressure shifts. Cracking glaciers, cold air moving through rock dot, but deep down, under your rational mind, a colder thought stirs. What if the creatures out there aren't new? What if they've been waiting? What if the ice didn't trap them? What if it protected us from them? It starts with a footprint dot, not a real one. Of course you're not that lucky. It's just an impression in the snow. Small, rounded, almost hoof-like. You assume it's a seal track at first. But it's too far inland. No nearby colonies. No known paths. And it's not alone. The pattern winds around the edge of a forgotten hut, one of many left behind by early explorers in the McMurdo Dry Valleys. You're here to catalogue the structure. What you get instead is a feeling. Let's call it what it is. It's not fear. Exactly. It's the opposite of comfort, like being watched by someone who doesn't blink. Inside the hut, the air smells old, musty, but strangely sterile, as if time itself vacuum sealed the place. Tools are still on the bench, blankets still folded. A mug still sits on a table, ringed. With a ghost of brown. You take a few steps inside. The floor creaks, but then you freeze, because you didn't hear just one creak. You swear something stepped behind you. You turn. Nothing. Historians still argue whether the paranormal experiences reported in Antarctica are the result of extreme isolation, altered circadian rhythms, or simply the mind rebelling against a landscape that refuses to change. But explorers have felt it for over a century. Even Sir Ernest Shackleton, during his legendary 1916 crossing of South Georgia Island, reported feeling a presence. He and his crew swore a fourth figure walked beside their group. Though only 3 were there, they never forgot it. You walk deeper into the hut. Your breath fogs in the beam of your headlamp. Something shifts in the corner of your vision. Again, nothing. You reach for your notebook and it's gone. Panic rises. Then, just as suddenly, the notebook reappears, exactly where you left it. You don't say anything to the others. Later that night, around the research station table, someone brings up the Jenny. You almost laugh. How can a ghost ship still haunt people in this age of satellites? But then you hear the story. In the 1840s, a whaling ship called the Hope discovered a schooner, frozen into pack ice near the South Shetland Islands. It was the Jenny, completely entombed, but her crew still aboard, frozen at their posts. Logbooks were found. The last entry read, May 4, 1823. No food for 71 days. I am the only one left alive. The Hope documented it, then left the ship, undisturbed. The Jenny was never seen again. Some say it still drifts, locked in the currents beneath the ice shelf, trapped in a time loop. Others think she finally sank, but the air around McMurdo grows tight when the tale is told. You finish your tea and step outside. Snow falls in perfect silence. There's no light pollution, no wind, just stillness. And then, a crunch behind you. You turn. Nothing. And yet the snow is marked. Your pulse quickens. You retrace your steps, heart loud in your ears, because you didn't walk that way, and you're absolutely not alone. You're told the story casually, over powdered eggs and lukewarm coffee. Did you know the Nazis came here? Someone drops it like it's gossip, not history, but you stop chewing, because this isn't a joke. In 1938, Nazi Germany launched a secret Antarctic expedition. Real ships, real planes, real flags stamped with swastikas, their destination. A remote stretch of the continent they named Neuschwabenland, New Swabia. Officially, it was about whale oil. Germany wanted to reduce its dependence on Norwegian exports. Whale oil made margarine, soap, and fuel, and the Southern Ocean was full of whales. It made economic sense, but of course, That's never the whole story. Historians still argue whether the real motive was strategic, symbolic, or something stranger. The MS Schwabenland, a seaplane carrier, left Hamburg with 82 men, scientists, naval officers, and one Nazi Party representative. Once near the Antarctic coast, they launched door-near-wall seaplanes to survey the land. Over 600,000 square kilometers were mapped. Aluminum darts marked with swastikas were dropped to stake claim. But why claim land that no one else wanted? Why send so many resources to a frozen wasteland? And here's the part that never makes the textbooks. Some documents were lost, others were locked away. Only in the 1950s did fragments of the expedition's archives reappear. Some of the original aerial photographs are missing to this day. You tap through digital scans in the archive room. Most show glaciers, mountains. Ice.1 shows something else, a series of dots in a near-perfect circle. Nothing geological, no shadows or ridges to explain them. Just white, and 12 dark impressions. Even spacing, like a clock, your cursor hovers over it too long. That night, you search for rumors. They say the Nazis were after hidden power, ancient energy. Some whisper that Vril, a mysterious force described in fringe German occult texts, was their true target, and some say they found it. The legend goes that New Swabia wasn't just a mapping project, it was the beginning of a base, a refuge, an underground stronghold in case the Reich fell. You scarf at first. But then you read the post-war reports. In July 1945, 2 months after Germany surrendered, a German submarine U-530 appeared off the coast of Argentina, without explanation. The commander offered no reason for the delay, no logs, no evidence. A month later, another sub-U-977 did the same. They hadn't been fighting. They hadn't been hiding in Europe. They were just gone. Some believe they delivered something, or someone, to Antarctica. You dig deeper, you find references to the Schirmacher Oasis, a region within Neuschwabenland with relatively warm air, freshwater lakes, and ice-free rock surfaces. A good place for a hidden outpost. Today, that area hosts modern research stations, Russia, India, Germany. You wonder what's buried under their feet. And then someone mentions a name, Operation Highjump. You scribble it down, because something's coming. Not snow. A mission. And not everyone would come back. Operation Highjump sounds like the name of a video game, but in 1946, it was very real and very massive. A full-blown US military expedition to Antarctica, launched less than a year after World War II ended. Officially, it was about training, testing equipment, and expanding America's polar knowledge. Unofficially, the scale made people nervous. It involved 4,700 personnel, 13 ships, and dozens of aircraft, the largest Antarctic operation in history. The leader, Admiral Richard E. Byrd, famed explorer and all-around ice veteran. The fleet split into 3 task forces: East, West, and Central. They mapped the continent using aerial photography, deployed troops to build ice bases, and conducted cold weather drills. So far, so normal. Until it ended early. Historians still argue whether the sudden wrap-up was due to weather, logistics, or something they found, because in the months after the mission, the rumor mill exploded. People began whispering about losses, aircraft that went down, equipment that failed, encounters no one could explain. Theories ignited. Some believed Byrd's mission wasn't to test gear, it was to investigate the rumored Nazi base established during the Neuschwabenland expedition. And others say he found something even stranger. You read the so-called secret diary of Admiral Byrd. It's a controversial document, unconfirmed, but chilling nonetheless. In it, Byrd recounts a flight over the South Pole during which his instruments failed, his engines stalled, and a strange craft escorted his plane to a landing site inside a hollow valley. There, he was greeted by tall beings with luminous eyes. They spoke to him not with words, but directly, into his thoughts. They called their home Agartha, an ancient subterranean realm beneath the Earth's crust, a refuge of wisdom, and they had a warning. You were treading a path of destruction, they allegedly told him. Turn away from nuclear weapons, return to balance. Byrd, according to the diary, was then returned to his plane. Instruments functional, flight path reset. No one else was said to have seen what he saw. The US government never acknowledged such an event, but later, in a 1947 interview in Chile, Byrd made an eerie comment: "The greatest threat may come from the polar regions, and we must prepare to face flying objects that can travel from pole to pole at incredible speeds." He never explained what he meant. You sip your tea a little slower that night, because even if the diary's fake, fabricated by writers hungry for mystery, what it describes fits too well with other threads. The hollow earth theory wasn't born with Byrd. Cultures across the globe, Tibetans with Shambhala, Mayans with their underworld cities, even certain Celtic myths spoke of realms beneath the earth, full of light, life, and knowledge. Agartha is said to be the greatest of them all, and some stories link it directly to Antarctica. An entrance hidden beneath the ice, protected, ancient, maybe guarded by those same luminoside beings, maybe even responsible for the strange electromagnetic anomalies recorded in certain Antarctic regions. It's all a bit much. Too mythical, too dramatic. But then again, so is a continent bleeding from its glacier. You close the report, lean back, and glance toward the southern horizon, where the white never ends, and you wonder, what if Admiral Byrd didn't find something beneath the ice? What if something found him? You zoom in, not metaphorically, literally. On your screen, a pixelated stretch of Antarctic plateau sharpens as satellite data loads in uneven layers. It looks wrong. There's something buried in the ice near the Prince Charles Mountains. It's not natural. It's circular, massive, almost asymmetrical. And you're not the first to notice it. In 2012, satellite imagery revealed what appeared to be a geometric anomaly near the Gambutsov Mountains, a formation that shouldn't exist in one of the harshest, least accessible places on Earth. The object, roughly 400 feet wide, with radial spokes emanating from a central depression. The kind of shape you might associate with a crashed craft, not a glacier. Mainstream science chalked it up to subglacial volcanic activity, but it doesn't look volcanic. It looks engineered. Historians still argue whether these shapes are glacial quirks, ancient structures, or signs of something far older, far smarter than us. Then came the Wilkes Land anomaly, a 300-mile wide mass concentration mascon detected by NASA's GRACE satellites. Buried beneath 2 miles of ice, it disrupted local gravity. That's not normal. Theories ranged from a massive meteor impact to a buried base. Some even suggested it might be the remnants of a lost city or something beyond human architecture entirely. And let's talk about that crash site. In 2017, viral videos spread of what looked like a half-buried saucer poking out from the ice like a coin jammed into a snowbank. The object had a distinctive curve, shadowed edges, and melt lines suggesting heat. Something had landed, or exited, or both. NASA dismissed it as a rock formation. Internet forums disagreed. So did a few oddly specific Reddit users claiming to be ex-military geospatial analysts. You raise an eyebrow. Meanwhile, several remote viewing experiments from the Cold War era, yes, those were real, claimed that non-human structures existed under Antarctica's crust. These classified psychic explorations often returned to the same coordinates without prompting, coincidence, or muscle memory of some deeper human intuition. You check the timestamps of several sudden radar blackouts reported by satellite operators. They last only minutes, but they always align with thermal spikes beneath certain ice shelves. No volcanic activity nearby, no storms, just a sudden pulse, then nothing, like something breathing. One image, taken by Landsat 8, shows an odd grid-like pattern beneath the ice. It's faint, it could be cracks, Or ruins. Archaeologists are cautious. Ufologists are not. Theories multiply. A crashed alien vessel preserved for thousands of years. A facility built by a pre-Ice Age civilization with access to unknown technologies. A portal site connecting Antarctica to ancient legends like Atlantis, Lemuria, or even biblical Eden. Each idea sounds ridiculous until you realize how many satellite images from Antarctica are redacted, blurred, or mysteriously corrupted. Why? Why redact white snow? You pan the map again. There, a shadowed bulge along a crevasse wall. You zoom, enhance, adjust brightness, and then you see it, a perfect hexagon, buried halfway in ice. Angles too precise to be natural. No explanation in the metadata. No research station nearby. Just you, your tea going cold, and a growing sense that the map isn't finished. You scribble a word into your notebook, structure, because even if it's not real, if it's a trick of light, a pixel glitch, or wishful paranoia, it still makes the pulse in your ear throb just a little harder. And the whisper of the wind outside, it suddenly feels artificial. You pause at the hexagon. You zoom back out, scan further east closer to the coast. And that's when you start noticing a pattern. Not just one anomaly, dozens, symmetrical ridges that run in straight lines for miles. Isolated heat signatures, in places that should be colder than Mars. Even a set of parallel indentations near the Queen Maud Land sector, like runways peeking through the snow. Or more chilling hatch marks. You're not the first to obsess over these images. In 2016, conspiracy forums exploded over a Google Earth discovery. What appeared to be a downed disc-shaped object, half embedded in the ice, with visible drag marks trailing behind it like something had landed, or crashed, and skidded before vanishing beneath a sheet of snow. Skeptics called it pareidolia. The believers, they called it vril technology. See, there's this legend about a Nazi-built craft, powered by an anti-gravity energy source called Vrilla Force, allegedly drawn from the Earth's core. The tech was supposedly stolen from Tibetan monks, or maybe aliens, or both. Historians still argue whether these vril craft were prototypes, war propaganda, or just wildly bad science fiction. But then the Kecksburg incident happened in 1965, then Roswell in 1947. Then dozens of sightings across the poles, silent silver discs, zipping across the sky and vanishing into nowhere. And all of that starts to sound less random when amateur sleuths mapped these anomalies onto Antarctica's no-fly zones. They noticed something curious. Almost every visual glitch, pixel smear, or censored coordinate aligned with restricted airspace. Official reason: environmental preservation. Sure, that's one way to phrase it. Another way: what are they trying to stop us from seeing? You remember the Antarctic Treaty signed in 1959 by all the big geopolitical players. A continent-wide agreement to avoid military presence, territorial claims, or resource exploitation. Strange, isn't it? The same nations that can't agree on oil, space, or which way to spell aluminum all suddenly unite to leave a whole continent untouched. Some say that's the most suspicious part of all. You search through declassified CIA documents, yes, those are real, unsigned reports of non-atmospheric phenomena over Queen Maud Land. The phrasing is weirdly clinical. They describe lights, shadows, and objects of indeterminate origin that moved against the wind. These reports come from weather balloons, scientific expeditions, and even a few Soviet logbooks. Not exactly fertile ground for sci-fi imagination. But the pattern is clear. Something keeps appearing, and it keeps being brushed off. In 2004, a Chilean team attempted to install a seismograph near Dome Fuji. The equipment kept malfunctioning. Batteries drained in minutes, and then they found a cylindrical tunnel under the ice, perfectly smooth, with charred walls. They were ordered to back off. No public report was filed. You zoom back in one last time. Near the Transantarctic Mountains, an unusually smooth mound of ice casts a shadow exactly 13 off solar alignment. You know what else uses 13 tilts? Radio, telescope dishes. But there are no stations there, no research domes. No names on the map, just coordinates. -81.2, 122.6. You type them into your phone. No result. You type them again. Still nothing. So you do what any reasonable person would do. You write the numbers on a sticky note and place it under your pillow, because something tells you if your dreams are doorways, this might just be a key. You never thought a treaty could sound haunted, but the Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959 and still enforced by over 50 countries, reads less like a diplomatic agreement and more like a very polite lock on a door. One once opened. It begins simply. No military activity shall take place. No territorial claims will be recognized. No resource exploitation permitted. And most interesting of all, no nuclear explosions or disposal of radioactive waste. It's not what's in the treaty that gives you the chills, it's what's missing. There's no mention of the mineral wealth hidden under thousands of feet of ice. No mention of the scientific blackouts when stations go offline 4 weeks at a time. And definitely no mention of why some parts of Antarctica are blurred out on satellite images. Historians still argue whether the treaty was a Cold War miracle or an orchestrated containment plan. The strangest part, everyone obeys it. The US, Russia, China rivals in every arena agree to this one untouched continent. No oil drilling, no military bases, no mining, no permanent population, just endless monitoring stations and vague language like peaceful scientific research. You wonder what happens when a place is so forbidden that even the greediest governments don't touch it. That's when the side stories begin. A British soldier, part of a secret post-war survey team, claimed to have found metal fragments far below the snow, with writing that wasn't in any known language. His report was buried, literally, under the ice. A Russian geologist, one of the original Lake Vostok researchers, vanished for 2 weeks and returned with no memory, frostbite scars, and a journal full of symbols he'd never seen before. And then there's the 1979 nuclear flash over the Southern Ocean, registered by a US Vela satellite. No country ever claimed responsibility. Some say it was an Israeli South African weapons test. Others whisper it was something that got out. Since then, the airspace near Bouvet Island, technically outside Antarctic boundaries, has been increasingly locked down. Flights rerouted. Ships denied access. Satellite signals scrambled near certain coordinates. And when asked why, officials say it's for environmental preservation. You see that phrase a lot down here. Meanwhile, on the surface, scientific stations from every major nation work together officially to measure climate, drill ice cores, and track penguins. Unofficially, some of these stations have equipment not meant for weather, underground levels not listed on any map, and project names like HARP-X and Resonance Echo. You once saw a leaked schematic for a device marked Mawson node. It was labeled in both English and Cyrillic. It featured a magnetometer array, a quantum sensor, and something called a seismic veil. You don't know what a seismic veil is. You hope you never find out. And still, through it all, the treaty stands. You'd think by now, decades later, someone would violate it. Stake a claim, build a fortress, mine the land. But they don't. Instead, a satellite goes dark. Every few years, a geologist breaks protocol and doesn't return. A base goes quiet and comes back online with no explanation. And every year, at the Treaty Review Summit, world leaders toast to peaceful cooperation on the world's most inhospitable and unexploited continent. And somehow, that's the scariest sentence you've heard all night. You glance out your window. Somewhere out there, under a sky full of stars, no telescope tracks, Antarctica waits. Not conquered, not colonized, just watching. You don't dream about Antarctica. You try not to, anyway, but sometimes, when you're half asleep, images drift in uninvited glacial corridors that whisper, Machines that hum beneath frost, a pulse you can't quite locate, but feel in your chest like it's your own. They say the ice is melting. That's not a metaphor, not a conspiracy. Just a slow, global drip of heat and consequence. Every year, satellites chart the retreat of glaciers. But you wonder if something else is retreating with them, or worse, waking up. A team near the Thwaites Glacier recently discovered something unsettling. Not just warm water, but massive cavities under the ice sheet. Not natural ones, geometrically aligned, tidy to tidy. They published a paper. Then they retracted it. Apparently the sonar malfunctioned, but the data lingered just long enough for some curious grad student to mirror the shapes with an overlay of Mesopotamian ruins. It wasn't a perfect match, but it wasn't nothing either. Meanwhile, moss spreads in patches where there should be nothing but ice. Tiny red worms not seen before wriggle near geothermal vents. And plankton blooms flash green in satellite images, in places where sunlight shouldn't penetrate. The microbial life in Lake Vostok. It's God. Some say it metabolizes silicon. Others say it doesn't metabolize at all. It simply pulses when you apply sound. But maybe that's just bad science fiction. Probably. Historians still argue whether ancient civilizations ever touched Antarctica, whether humans fled there when the climate shifted, or whether something older stayed behind, while the Earth spun through cycles of forgetting. But every year, the ice thins. A drone meant to measure snow depth picked up rhythmic vibrations at 700 feet. Not seismic, not tectonic, just steady, like breath. Or a heartbeat. And now, suddenly, the Antarctic Treaty becomes more than politics. It becomes a quarantine sign, because as you trace the cracks on the map, you notice something. Each place we weren't supposed to touch, each mythic site lies along an ancient arc. From Blood Falls to Lake Vostok, from the Ellsworth Pyramid to Dome Sea. An arc, not random. A sealed lid, you think. A lock. And something might be turning the key. As Antarctica warms. It doesn't just reveal fossils and frozen bacteria. It reveals history. The kind that predates humans. The kind that doesn't fit in textbooks. The kind that may not want to be remembered. You imagine yourself standing there on the cracked edge of an ice shelf, the wind howling like it did for Shackleton, for Byrd, for every explorer who went afar, and feeling it, a vibration in your boots, a breath in your lungs that isn't yours, a presence. You close your eyes, but under the ice, nothing sleeps forever. And now. You're warm, not freezing at the edge of a howling glacier, or peering into the black eye of a subglacial lake. No, you're wrapped in blankets, the hum of whatever device you're using now just a soft reassurance. The weight of this strange story settles gently over you, like a snowdrift too lazy to bury anything. It's just Antarctica, after all. Just a place, a white smear at the bottom of the map. A blank space filled with penguins and paperwork. A patch of silence where even conspiracy theorists whisper, you don't need to think about the pyramid anymore. Or the lake. Or that voice they recorded near the magnetic pole. That was probably wind. Or data corruption. Or dreams. You've had those before. And if you dream again tonight, let it be soft. Let it be gentle. Let it be nothing but cold stars and the blank sheet of ice, untouched by history or hubris. Drift off, knowing that the world is wide and weird and full of wonder. But for now, you're safe. Let the lights fade. Let the questions blur. Because Antarctica will still be there in the morning. Watching. Waiting. Whispering. And right now, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Good night.